It's 6:27 on Sunday, the 6th of April, and welcome to the Pompey Politics Podcast, the show where we discuss matters of local, national, and international political importance and get to the heart of the matter in a rational, reasonable, and kindly way. I'm Ian Tiny Morris.
And I'm Simon Sainsbury. I'm not sure which of us is the rational, which of us the reasonable, and which is the kind. We'll both be the kindly.
Well, there needs to be three of us
Yes.
for that to work.
Well, yeah, we'll put an ad on LinkedIn or something. So yeah, we were national last week. We were international the week before. So
time to go local.
Time to go local, and you can't get much more local than Fratton. Which for anybody outside of Portsmouth in the UK is a ward in the centre of the city, which we have an impassioned community campaigner, Jacob Short, to talk to us about his life in campaigning and about the needs of the people in Fratton. So welcome, Jacob.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I don't know if we could work that free in between us of who's which one, but we'll work it out through the course of the evening.
We see how it ends up at the end.
Yeah,
and go from there.
Put a poll up.
Yeah, we'll put a poll up. So Jacob, let's get crack right into it. So tell us about yourself. What got you involved into politics, and what's your background?
This is what I find funny when people ask me that question. It's I never actually used to like politics. My dad used to listen to LBC and I used to really hate it. Now I can't get enough of it for some reason. But when I was in secondary school, I got involved in my school council and sort of progressed doing things like NCS and Unlock, which is a local social action organisation. And then I sort of did my first unofficial election as student union president for City of Portsmouth College, which was Portsmouth College and Highbury before they had a merger. And then that made me a student governor as well. So that was sort of where I sort of first had like change making and campaigning and things like that. And then I sort of decided to take the next step and get involved in local politics, and I met with all the national parties, joined one of them for a short period of time but couldn't quite resonate with them, and that's when I ventured across PIP and spoke with Councillor George Madgwick, the group leader, and we sort of had a chat, and over time, decided to get involved at 17, and here we are now, just over 2 years later, still going. So yeah, that's sort of where it all began.
Still going strong. It sounds like the start of a song from The Sound of Music. It's The Sound of Politics.
We'll have to rewrite it.
Going on 18. Yeah. Ian.
So, and you mentioned there, for those who are outside of the city, the Portsmouth Independents, and that's spelt with ENTS rather than looking to campaign for Portsmouth to be its own entity. You've opted to join and stand as a Portsmouth Independent rather with the national parties. What drove you to, what kind of took you on that route? And do you think that makes it harder to get elected?
I think I can answer that last bit firsthand. Having done 2 elections, it's definitely harder to get elected to council as an independent. And the national parties have a voter base. The Greens get just over 100 votes in Fratton. The Conservatives get just over 200. And Labour and Liberals are the ones that sort of battle it out until 2023, when I came along and sort of put a stick in it. But the reason why I went with PIP really was because, like I said, I couldn't resonate with the national parties, and it was a case of I cared for the local community and local matters and local issues, and I don't really have a national agenda. I like to keep up with national politics because at the end of the day, the decisions of national government affect everybody. But Pitt was the one that I could resonate with. It was the one that I found to be the easiest one to work in, the one with the most flexibility for how I work and for the way that I want to do things. There isn't rigorous voting. We're not told, there's no whip system. We're not told how to vote for X, Y, Z. And it's just a case that, I don't have to answer to the national counterpart. I notice a lot of the national parties having acquaintances within them all, is they have to answer to what their national counterparts are doing. And with PIP, we don't have to do that. We have a local agenda and focus on Portsmouth.
And I guess that's the double-edged sword nature of it, is it, that some people will vote for their preferred party irrespective of who their candidate is. So potentially you might gain some votes if you were in a national party, but equally, if, shall we say, a party of the moment is distasteful to the electorate, then that can have the opposite effect where people won't vote for you because of the colour of your rosette. So I guess it cuts both ways.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. Simon.
Okay, so I guess you, as someone that's we see from your from your campaign material, you're out on the streets and you're speaking to residents a lot. Is there anything particular hot topic issues that you've got that are coming up at the moment in on the streets of Fratton?
So I think the biggest issue at the moment that I'm a part of is Binstead childcare services have been asked by the city council to vacate the premises within 6 months, although a month of that has already passed, so there's only 5 months remaining. The council have said that they can't financially maintain the building anymore. There's been scaffolding up for around a year, with very little information as to what's next. So I've written to the Director of Culture, Leisure and Regulatory Services and the Director of Children and Family Services and Education to sort of just get more of a background from them. But I've also got a meeting organised within the next couple of weeks with the Binstead childcare management team, and we've got a group of parents and surrounding residents who are going to be working with me on getting a petition going to PCC through official channels, because they don't seem to like change.org and things like that, because they can't validate the data, and they can't confirm whether these people are Portsmouth residents, etc. So we're having to do it a slightly different way. So I have Councillor George Matchwick supporting me in his Leader of the Opposition capacity. So yeah, we're gonna see what happens within the next 5 months, and hopefully either save the centre and keep the childcare service there, because they've been there for over 30 years. Kids who were there have now gone back with their own kids, and there are a lot of memories there. And if we can't save that specific building, hopefully find them alternatives.
Well, it certainly sounds like a much needed, valuable service. So hopefully you can find the answers to that one and understand what the problem with the building is, and like you say, either find them somewhere else to live or find some other way to maintain the building. But is that the kind of sort of thing that comes across your, I wouldn't say desk, but that comes to your attention? Is that just things can be happening in the community that may or may not have heard about or kind of understand or heard of?
So yeah, it's difficult because a lot of communications are online
Hmm.
and maybe out in quite out in the open, and some are quite private, and there are a lot of things that I can't deal with without being elected.
Yeah.
So it's quite difficult for me to turn people down sometimes. But I do get a variety of issues, and also within my capacity of um chair of the Fratton Residents Association, we get a mixed bag of things there as well, and different meetings and things. So I do see quite a variety. Some I can help with, some I can't, but we'll see what the future holds.
Thank you.
And staying with that buildings theme, Jacob, obviously planning is something that comes up quite often. And you recently made a deputation against the redevelopment of Venture Tower into student accommodation, and yourself and the Portsmouth Independents have been quite outspoken about HMOs. I guess with, you know, a densely packed city, a thriving university, and a lack of affordable housing, what can really be done? And is there an element of the challenge around housing? Often these things can't be stopped by the local authority. But can you give us some of your thoughts on that?
So I think the first thing to look at is that HMOs actually take away affordable housing, because they take away the family homes, the 2 3 bedroom homes that people need, and that the council could look into purchasing, because I know they are buying back some properties. I don't know the ins and outs of that though. And it also allows landlords to charge extortionate amounts for a small room, sometimes that barely meet requirements. We have 6 7 8 bed HMOs normally in a 2 bed property. And there is something that we can actually do, and that the independents have been pushing for a few years now, is actually the 5% policy. Currently, it's 10% of properties within a 50. I can never remember the metric, but
50 is a
50-meter
50
radius.
meters. Yeah, that's the one. So it's currently 10% within 50 meters in a radius, and we're actually arguing to bring that down to 5%, because we understand within planning rules that you can't just object to it based on the type of property it is. There actually has to be something with some issues with the plans. But if we can change
Mm.
the policy and reduce the amount of HMOs allowed in the area, that balances it out to an acceptable level. Because, like you say, we are a densely populated city. We do have a high turnover of students. And we do have some of the university buildings aren't even filled, which is why I one of the many reasons I gave a deputation against Venture Tower, because it's further away from the university campuses, and the ones closer to the campuses aren't filled. So why do we need more student accommodation if we if they're not filled? And that's a case where the developers did say we've built it a certain way so that it can be turned into housing down the line if needed. But looking at the way that those rooms are going to look, and the size of them, and the modern designs of them, they don't entirely seem like they're going to be affordable.
And I guess it's that point on affordability, isn't it, Jacob? I mean, an HMO room in Portsmouth is somewhere between sort of 650 and £900 per calendar month, which, is an awful lot of money. But I guess if you're a single person, or if you're a student, that you've got to live somewhere, and I guess it's that challenge of, you know, affordability is always a moot point. But I guess there is that element of realistically HMOs or student blocks are the only, aren't they realistically the only solution?
No, not necessarily. I think there's a lot that we can do coinciding with national government and their housing targets. You know, Angela Rayner is the Minister for Local Government and Housing. So,
Mm.
you know, it kind of coincides within her portfolio. But there's more we can do than just cramming every road in the city with HMOs. I mean, the planning committee meeting that Venture Tower is at, all of the other items on the agenda were HMOs for Fratton.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and you know, a whole planning meeting about Fratton makes us feel kind of special, but not for the right reasons. You know.
Yeah, the attention is nice, but the
Yeah, and I guess that's the dilemma, isn't it? And you know, whilst we can all be, I guess the challenge is, isn't it? You know, a three-bedroom house in Fratton, you know, rents for 1,500, 1,600 pounds a month. A seven-bedroom HMO is bringing in, you know, £5,500 a month. So you can understand why developers want to make them. And I guess it's that demand piece, which is if they're able to sell those rooms at, you know, let's say £800 a month, then there must be a demand there for it.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the need for housing is, you know, people will take what they can get. If they can get a room in a HMO for 600 to 900 a month compared to a flat or a house for over 1,000, I wouldn't blame them for taking that, especially
Mm.
in the current economic climate. So there is a demand, but not for HMOs. There's a demand for housing, and that's the difference, is we are losing affordable family housing for the sake of developers passing HMOs because we can't deny them just because they're HMOs. But that's where the national parties are failing to act, is changing that policy to 5% to reduce the amount of HMOs in that 50-meter radius.
I guess a slightly provocative question, Jacob. Should the council be building HMOs
I think
or developing HMOs?
I think that goes back to the policy. You know, if there is a need for housing and there are a form of property that is needed, then it needs to happen for the sake of housing our residents. But at the moment, despite how much objections and how much deputations that councillors and residents give, we can't do anything because of the policy. So if we can change that policy, whoever the developers of those properties may be, it reduces the amount of affordable housing lost to HMOs, which currently there are some, not all, but some landlords who abuse their responsibilities, set extortionate rents, and the properties aren't always maintained. So I think it's a case of finding a balance, in my opinion.
No, it's perfectly fair. Simon.
okay. Thank you very much. So, moving on to fly tipping, then. So, one of the things you that's a regular item of your social media posts is fly tipping.
Yes,
Is that just that you
yes,
like
bane of my life.
taking pictures and putting on Facebook of fly tipping, or is there a particular problem with it in Fratton? And if what's behind that? Is it a lack of local pride, or is it something? What's behind that amount of fly tipping?
So I think first of all, and this has been reported by by Fratton councillors. So if this isn't factual, blame them. But according to their reports at our most recent Residents Association community meeting, a lot of Fratton's fly tipping is coming from Central Southsea. So it's not necessarily Fratton residents that don't have that pride. Quite frankly, I think Fratton residents have that pride, but they're so exhausted of the problem that a lot of them have given up reporting or given up just generally caring. And I think that's the issue at hand, is that we have this major issue of fly tipping across the ward, and it's not, you know, down by the station or up by Powers Court Road. It is, I could walk from top to bottom and report 15 plus items of fly tipping. Like it's everywhere. And right now, you know, all I can do is, as I've been doing, reporting it, putting photos on Facebook, etc., raising awareness. But in my last 2 local election campaigns, I have campaigned for increased funding for CCTV in hotspot areas, and increased community warden patrols, because it is factual that the independents reduce fly tipping in their areas based on the actions that we take and the voice that we provided for our residents. I mean, both Councillor Madgwicks and Councillor Dyke up in Paulsgrove have reduced their fly tipping by over 80%. So it is possible to reduce fly tipping by major amounts if you put the right thought in, the right actions in place, and the right money where it needs to be. And right now we do have some cameras going up, but there's no permanent action. It's cameras up for a few weeks, and if they don't catch anything, they get moved on. Right now, it's just temporary solutions.
And in terms of the problem itself, Jacob, is it a case of, you know, if we to try and understand it, is it a case of people, you know, who had a bit of a spring cleaning and, to use the technical term, can't be asked to take their stuff to the tip, or is it sort of commercial level where, you know, builders have done refurbs and just, you know, rather than paying for proper waste disposal, they're dumping a lorry load on the pavement?
I think it's quite a mixture of both, in my honest opinion. I mean, we've had, you know, there are obvious times where it's business waste and it's, you know, bags of rubble and things like that. But often it's household items like a chest of drawers or a mattress or an old washing liner or something like that. And as I said before, you know, I don't know whether it's coming from Fratton residents or Central Southsea residents or elsewhere. I don't necessarily want to pick a war with Central Southsea, but I think we just need to really, I think it's that the booking system is a very hit and miss. It worked during COVID. It made sure that there was social and I'll tie Elliot's question in with that.
Cool.
Actually, about accessible recycling facilities. I think the recycling facilities overall are quite a problem. You know, the closest one is Port Solent, and if you can't travel off of the island, you're paying X amount for a company to take it away or for the council to take it away, because taxis, etc., you know, won't take bags of tip waste with you know, in the vehicle. So the fact that you've got to book and then travel so far as well, especially with all the roadworks, it's just not ideal for some people. Some people like it. Some people think it's brilliant. You go there, you're not queuing up. You've got a set time. It's a couple of clicks. But for those who can't access the internet or don't have the means to get there, there aren't any necessarily affordable ways of getting rid of waste. So some are probably just taking bags down the road, or, you know, bringing a mate or whatever and being like, you know, could you just drive this somewhere for me?
But it's kind of weird, isn't it? Because in some respects, because a lot of the terrace, because a lot of Fratton is densely packed terraced housing without forecourts and without parking spaces. So probably, I mean, I don't know whether they do, but if a certain proportion of the residents don't have access to a car for whatever reason, in some ways that's actually a good thing, because they're not contributing to pollution. They're not struggling to find a parking space, and they're in an area that's really, really great for public transport. But on the other hand, we all have things that we need to get rid of, household items that, as we upgrade our, as we replace our sofas or our TVs or whatever. But it kind of seems like that loop hasn't been kind of joined up to actually help those people actually get rid of their stuff responsibly. Is that kind of, there isn't actually a responsible option?
No, there isn't. There's either the option between being responsible and forking out that little bit of money, which in the current climate isn't necessarily easy, or being irresponsible, risking it, and sometimes fly tipping. I'm not saying that's all. Some people are responsible, and there are occasions where, like, if there's a property that doesn't have a forecourt and I see like a fridge freezer out the front of the property, I won't report it, because I think, probably just wait for scrap. But if I come back a week later and it's still there, I'll go ahead and report it. So it's a case of sometimes I try and take a step back and think, is this worth risking a fine, etc., when they could just be getting rid of it and have nowhere to
just store it in the meantime. Yeah.
So it's finding that balance a lot of the time without being too harsh on residents.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. That's good. Ian?
We touched on social media, and you are, I think it would be fair to say, Jacob, that you're quite prolific on social media, keeping residents informed both of the issues you find and of, some of the community meetings and some of the positive stuff you experience as well. But social media can be a harsh and unforgiving place. So what part does social media play in your campaigning, and how effective do you think it is?
So I think first of all, no matter what avenue you're in, social media is a disgusting place. Like I live on it. Like, I'm not even going to deny that I'm on some platform of social media at every point in the day. But it is just that fact that it does have that negativity, that malicious behavior sometimes. I mean, there's often been times where I've had to consult friends and family and be like, is this, should I delete this comment? Should I report it? What steps should I take? But I think the pros of social media outweigh the cons. I can get information out instantly to residents en masse with a couple of clicks, and I can then, and vice versa as well, I can receive information within a couple of clicks. It does depend on Wi-Fi and that stuff, obviously, but I can't be down. I can't knock every door every second of the day talking to residents all the time. Same as councillors, those of us who campaign voluntarily have lives outside of the community and outside of our campaign work. So for me, I can be out with friends and get a message from a resident, and I can quickly reply, hi, thanks for your message. I'll look into this and get back to you with more detail. And then when I'm home and relaxing again, I can jump on and look into that and get back to them. Whereas, if I'm knocking a door, they might not be in, or it might not be a good time to talk. So social media provides that instant communication that is often needed with a lot of matters at the moment, like crime and so.
Just a follow-up question on that, Jacob, because I occasionally venture onto social media myself, and you said you've been kind of a couple of years at this. Do you think that social media is becoming more hostile? I guess I looked at there was a story around the HMO planning that the news posted today, and instantly there were 20 comments kind of added, which was, well, all the bloody councillors are taking brown envelopes. Well, if we weren't letting in everybody in boats, then there'd be plenty of spare housing for everybody. Everything seemed very, very negative and very aggressive. Do you think you've seen a change in tone in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think it's not just social media that's changed, it's people's attitudes towards politics and politicians and such, is that, we have these news stories popping up daily at this rate of councillors, MPs, candidates, whatever, being suspended or at points arrested. And it just sets people off. And at the end of the day, I don't blame them. And I think social media is just a way of sitting behind a screen, no risk of, face-to-face conflict or physical conflict. You can say what you want, the good old phrase, keyboard warriors. I think people are angry and they feel safe behind a screen
Hmm.
to just do that. And that's why social media has become a place of hate, because people don't argue or debate with each other face to face anymore, because on every side of politics there are these extreme opinions that people would get in fights for if it was face to face.
Hmm.
And so social media is a safe place, but it's making it hostile for everyone in the process.
So I guess if we flip that around to something more positive, does that mean that your experience as somebody who, let's face it, you wear out a fair amount of shoe leather in Fratton, getting about and speaking to people and talking to residents. Would you say that the IRL or in real life experience of a political campaigner is better than the one you experience online?
Oh, yes and no. I mean, I've had my fair share of abuse on the campaign trail. I mean, from when the Portsmouth Labour WhatsApp groups got leaked, there was a member of the Labour Party that openly paraded in there that he screamed at me while me and a group of friends while we were delivering leaflets. So I do get the abuse in person as well, but it's not as often. And I think it goes back to that same point of people feel able to, say something disgusting to me behind a screen, but wouldn't necessarily come out the door and say it once I put a leaflet through. I mean, you'll get some people who will like come out and be like, you know, complain that they don't want it and then chuck it on the floor. And it's like, you could have just handed it back to me. I've
Hmm.
been nice and handed it back and just said you're not interested. Can I take you off your list?
Yep.
And that would have been fine. So, it's very minor abuse in person. The the proper like gut-wrenching, heartbreaking stuff is more online.
It's yeah, I think that, I mean, I think that's you make a good point there, Jacob. I think I know Ian will find it hard to believe, but sometimes I've disagreed with people online and got myself into situations where
All the time, yeah.
where that's become a bit of a tit for tat. But I think you're right that if you were sat across a table in a pub or something, you wouldn't actually have that sort of engagement. Some of the really bonkers stuff, to be honest with you, most of the people would say, "Oh, shut up, you're talking nonsense," and that would basically just shut that conversation down, or you would just ignore the kind of drunk person, wittering on about the aliens stole their cat or something at the end of the bar that everybody kind of ignores. But mostly people in person aren't anywhere near as they don't seem to have that free license to be as shitty to you in person as some people seem to hide behind online, do they?
Yeah, it's people definitely feel a lot more confident behind the screen. For sure.
We've got a comment here that I'm going to share because it's a word I've never heard before, and it's from Smooth Life. I don't know if you can. I'll read it out. So people saw the world stop during COVID. People want the world to stop again and to address their needs, cost, upward social class, movement, opportunity, housing availability. Social media breeds slacktivists. I've never heard the word slacktivist before. Anyone want to? What does it mean? Anyone?
Which platform is that on?
That's on YouTube.
On YouTube.
What's before the word activist?
It's slacktivist. So it's a contraction of the word
yes.
and activist.
No, I have heard. So
is this like a lazy activist, not someone that gets up and goes to protest, but someone that is a keyboard warrior? Oh, okay, right, okay. Well, we learn something new every day, everyone. Thank you very much.
It's good to learn.
We've learned that. Thanks, Smooth Life. You've taught us a new word.
No, and it is. I guess it is that challenge where the art of disagreeing nicely is a dying art. But hopefully, it's something on the podcast that we're keeping the spirit burning.
We keep that light of hope burning.
And in terms of things which can bring disagreement, and
should we go to
this one's yours, Simon.
So parking, Jacob.
Oh, that subject.
So everybody loves a bit of. It's always. I always found that it's local politics is about poo, potholes, and dog poo, as in not human, hopefully. Dog poo, potholes, and parking. So parking. Permits.
Well,
permit or not to parking permit or not to permit. Hated or loved. Are they needed or wanted in Fratton? I
think it's a difficult one because wherever you go in the city, parking permits are going to be hit and miss, and it's a factor that I've noticed throughout my time campaigning is that there are a lot of roads where one side is permitted and one side isn't.
Oh yeah,
and things like that, and that creates a lot of issues. I've always said you either permit the whole city or don't permit any of it. That's always been my personal opinion. But in Fratton, residents wanted it. There was a consultation back in 2023, maybe late 2022, for St Mary's Road up to New Road. And back in October 2024, I was told by the council that it was delayed and would be implemented early 2025. We're 4 months in and residents have had absolutely zero communication. So they want it, they're not happy, it's not happening. It was the Liberal Democrats promised in 2023 and they haven't delivered as they said they would. So here we are now with parking issues continuing 2 years later. I've campaigned for a resident parking advisory group, which would bring together councillors, residents, council officers, local schools, businesses, etc., and working out a parking solution that works for everyone. On the weekends, maybe use Portsmouth Academy's car park for local residents, within that permitted zone. Because I know, or like on match day, let people park in there. Because I know Milton Cross do match day parking. And there are loads of different things that we can do to ease the parking issue. You're never going to resolve it because
Mm.
there are too many cars on the road for parking spots. Unless people start getting rid of cars, we're not going to solve parking,
Yeah.
but we can ease it in other ways rather than election promises that aren't kept.
But you thought a school, if they can find a way to charge for parking on match days, considering how cash-strapped most schools are, surely they'd be onto a winner.
Well, Milton Cross do it, and I think they charge about £2.50, something like that. So,
That's not even a lot then.
no,
I was going to say
they're massively underselling that.
They're underselling that. They need a consultant.
We've just made
ourselves
ourselves lots of fans in Portsmouth City, Portsmouth Football Club. That's great. We've they're gonna love us. But yeah, that's lots of different ways to kind of tackle that one. So thank you very much.
Yeah, so I guess if we look back a little bit, three elections in, Jacob, and I think most people who don't follow politics and sit in that keyboard space probably don't understand the emotional load that a candidate puts in to an election campaign. And in 2024, you fell less than 100 votes short of winning the Fratton ward. Without wishing to trigger anything, can you take us back to that point? Kind of how did you feel, as those numbers were read out?
Well, I had my annual election cry. Every election, I like to go into one of the rooms and just let all the emotions out because it was during the count, the nerves were high. Like my anxiety was through the roof. I was terrified, and then just that final blow of the 95 votes. It was quite devastating. And there have been occasions where I've sat back and thought, do I take a bit of me time? But I sort of decided to soldier on and continue, took a week off or similar, something like that, and then went back to it because at the end of the day, if I can help residents in some capacity, I will. I'm not one of those candidates that you'll only hear from them at election time, and that you don't get any updates or any communications from them. I want to be that all year round sort of help for local residents and sort of be that voice, and that's sort of why I keep on doing what I'm doing now. I mean, we're just over a year away from the next election, so, and I'm still going strong. So just gonna do my best and hope for the best next year.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? That again, because we only elect in 3 out of 4 cycles, this one it was always going to be a fallow year. So, I guess there is that piece, isn't there, where I guess if you would have decided to take 6 months or even probably 12 months off and then do a 12-month run in, you'd be doing more than most political campaigners. I guess my question is this kind of political local activism become a way of life for you now?
Yeah, I think I can't lie. It does take over your life in some capacities. Like I won't deny that there are times where I am, I wake up and I'll reply to my emails and I'm still there in the evening writing something or organizing something, and it's 24/7 365. I mean, I've had residents reach out to me at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and just because my sleep is awful, I'm awake, so I'll reply and help where I can. But I think it's definitely become a way of life, and my friends and family have noticed that a lot as well. I mean, for those for those people who don't know me very well, I have got an identical twin, who, bless him, works at one of the Lidls in the city, and he gets a lot of oh, tell Jacob I voted for him in the election, or tell Jacob, and he's just done with it. He'll ring me after work and be like, "Can people stop coming and talking to me?"
But that,
And I get a lot of, "Do you work in Lidl?" And I'm like, "No, that's my twin."
well, I mean, he's making note of them, right? Because that's passive canvassing.
Well, yeah, I might get him to start like telling.
Don't know whether his boss in Lidl will
I might, take contact details and drop them to me at the end of the day.
Just give them a notepad and just ask them to write their details down so that
I might steal that actually.
Or give them a QR code so that they can just.
If that doesn't break any election rules.
Yeah, scan it, a QR code, and scan it on their phone or something. So we've got a couple of comments. We've got another one from Smooth Life saying, don't get too down. You seem a young guy, and life's a long time. So bit of support there, and
I appreciate that.
As you say, leader of the opposition. Just for those who aren't familiar with the political situation, the Portsmouth Independents Party are the opposition. So they're the party with the next highest number of seats on Portsmouth City Council after the administration, which is the Lib Dems. George Madrick, he's remarked about you messaging him at 2 a.m. Look, if you're both up at 2 o'clock in the morning, then and answering messages,
look, George, you reply. That's not my fault. If you keep on replying to me at 2 a.m., I'm going to keep on messaging you at 2 a.m.
That's on you two, and you're both going to have to sort that out between you. But I mean, but it must be kind of something coming from 2023 where you were 600 votes behind you're in third and 600 votes behind the winner, to 2024 to be less than 95 votes behind, and actually to close that distance in only 1 year. Is that do you allow yourself time to understand that surely that's quite a successful thing, right? That's quite an achievement.
Well, yeah, I took pride in the fact that I was the only candidate in the 2024 locals.
Mm-hmm.
Don't confuse it with the general. I was last there, not second. But with the locals, I was the only candidate or party per se to increase my votes. Labour dropped by just over 200, or maybe just over 300, something like that. No, 200, and Liberals were just over 300, and the Conservatives and the Greens stayed similar to their normal rate. But I despite the results, I did take pride in the fact that I was the only one to increase my votes, and there was a good old Labour leaflet during the 24 local elections saying that it's a battle between Labour and Lib Dems. The other candidate came 600 votes behind. Like, they wouldn't even call me the independent candidate or Jacob or anything like that. So I was like an ambiguous candidate to them, and then I came along and beat them. So that was that's a little spring in my step when negative campaigning starts and you prove them wrong, and it's a bit like, look at us go.
Well,
yeah. So just to close the show out, Jacob, so what does the next sort of 13 months hold for the quote unquote other candidate?
I think for me it's I think trying for the first part anyway is balancing my life a little bit. I don't want to jump right into election mode a year out. I want to make sure that I see my family and my friends and spend time for myself. So while I'm still out and about every week and answering the phone and bits like that, it's very much me time for a little bit.
Yeah.
But I am intending, as people very well know, I am intending to stand again. That's public knowledge. Everyone knows that. All the other parties are probably prepared for that. So I'm hoping in May 26 to finally win an election that isn't student union and be a ward councillor for Fratton. But between now and the next sort of 13 months or so, I think it's going to be a very steep climb.
Yeah, well, there's going to be a lot going on, isn't there? There's all the mayor stuff,
yeah,
there's the local government reorganisation stuff, and the
Yes. Well, that won't come into play. We don't really know what's happening there, but we know that's not coming into play until sort of 27, 28. So I think in my brain, I can't talk for the whole of PIP, but in my brain, I'm very focused on 2026. And even if I'm only elected for a year and local government reorganisation changes everything, I want to be able to do what I can within that year. So my goal as a personal candidate is just 2026. As for what happens in 27 and 28, we'll see.
That's 2027 Jacob's problem.
Exactly. So on that, thank you ever so much for coming along, Jacob. And I think on behalf of the Fratton residents, thank you for the work that you do in that voluntary unpaid capacity, because it's very clear to anyone who knows you that there's an energy behind that work that is to help and support your local community.
Definitely.
So you've been listening to the Pompey Politics Podcast. I've been Ian Tiny Morris.
And our guest this evening has been Jacob Shaw.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. And I've been Simon Sansbury. Please do make sure to join us next week at 6:27 when we'll be hearing from a councillor from Hampshire County Council and hearing from a councillor from the Isle of Wight to hear their views on all of the shenanigans around devolution and local government reorganisation. And then we'll be taking 3 weeks off for Easter. So we'll. But if you do want to make sure you keep up to date with what's happening with the show, please do make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever you're hearing your podcasts. Or please do sign up for our newsletter so you get an opportunity to hear what's being planned and to send in question or topic or guest ideas. We're happy to hear them. And please, just so that everyone knows, Facebook have now started only leaving live stream videos actually on their platform for a certain period of time. So over time, you'll see only our most recent videos actually staying on Facebook. So if you're following us on Facebook but want to have a look at some of our older stuff, either find that on all the podcast platforms or go and have a look at that on YouTube. But see you next week at 6:27. Thanks very much. Don't forget to like, follow and comment on Facebook, or comment and subscribe on YouTube. Find us on all the social media platforms: Facebook, X, YouTube, Threads, LinkedIn.